Still 6:29. Okay. It is now 6:30, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Community Development Committee to order. While this meeting is being held in person, we are also offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionkansas.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment to the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you are part of our in-person group tonight, please raise your hand, but stay seated, and we will stay seated, and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comments. When you make your comment, please state your name and the city of residence for the record. Also, be conscientious of others trying to speak, and speak slowly and clearly. This meeting will be reported and posted on the city's website at missionkansas.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. Ms. Falks, please call the roll.
Hayden Chomposi. Here. Vaughn.
Here.
Camosa.
Here.
Ryard.
Here.
Kring. Schmid.
Here.
Via Zoom, he's here. Josie.
I am here. Yep.
Davis.
Here. Our first item of business tonight is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on an item not on our agenda tonight? Please note public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone online? Okay. Seeing none, we have one public presentation this evening from Block Realty Services regarding a potential expansion of the 5665 Foxridge project. Ms. Smith, can you please introduce our guests?
Yes, thank you very much. Several of you were here as we negotiated the multifamily project for 5655 Foxridge with Block Realty Services Group. Block Real Estate Services. They reached out to us late last year with an interest in expanding that project and potentially acquiring the 5700 Broadmoor office building, which is immediately to the south. So we thought it was important to invite them to kind of talk through that vision with you all and share that. You have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, which they will walk through this evening at your place. Those of you who were here the previous project will remember Mr. Aaron Messmer, Mr. Will Block, Mr. Curtis Holland, but we'll ask Aaron to come make a presentation, or at least start the presentation, and I think will take over. So I'm sure, do you want to get through your presentation and take questions, or take questions along the way? Do you have a preference?
Oh, we can take them as they
Okay, there you go.
We'll be all right. So thank you, Laura, and thank you, members of the council. Aaron Messmer, Block Real Estate Services, 4622 Pennsylvania, Kansas City, Missouri. Many of you know Block. We've been here before. Many of you were part of the project that we have previously approved. But as a little bit of background, next slide, please. Block is a developer of Class A first-rate projects throughout the metro area, as well as in other municipalities throughout the Midwest. We pride ourselves on building the very, very top of the market, and we think that's what we're going to bring to Mission with the 56 and Foxridge project. Next slide, please. As Laura mentioned, we are looking at not just the 56 and Foxridge project now, but the adjoining site at 5700 Broadmoor. We can go to the next slide. One of the things I wanted to point out before we move on to the building to the south is our history at 56 and Foxridge. We did buy the building, the former JCPenney call center. After we were able to work with the city on the approvals, we went ahead and demolished that building. So we had to do pretty significant environmental remediation and things like that. But we were able to go ahead and scrape the site. If you go by it today, it's dirt. It's ready for development. So we're excited to have it in that condition as opposed to a building that really needed to be torn down a long time ago. Next slide, please. Just a reminder of where we've been previously. So this is the plan that was approved by this body. We have been working diligently to find ways to get the project out of the ground. And like I said, we did commence with the demolition of the existing project. Despite our efforts here, we continue to struggle to get the numbers to pencil, even with the incentives that are in place, but we continue to work on that. If we can go to the next slide, please. One of the things that we talked extensively about with council here is making sure that we activate the building on all sides. And I think that some of the things we'll talk about in a minute will kind of speak to this, but you may recall we have our main entrance that faces Metcalf, but there was a lot of discussion and a lot of work with staff and council to make sure that the Broadmoor portion of the project was activated. So this includes our pet washing station and our bike stations, where if you're coming in and out of the project, whether you're riding your bike or taking your dog out for a walk, those things are located on the Broadmoor side of the project. And then our units throughout the project have that step-down capability from the patios, so that they address the street in a manner that really tries to activate that at the ground level. Go to the next slide, please. Will's going to talk a little about the project to the south. Thank you.
Good evening, Will Block, 4622 Pennsylvania Avenue. This is I recognize some faces from a meeting last year, but this is the first time I've had a chance to address everybody, so I appreciate your time tonight. As Aaron mentioned, we spent some time last year trying to work through the financial feasibility of starting 56 Foxridge, the approved project. It was one that there was a significant amount of motivation to start soon in our portfolio of projects that we have on the shelf right now. But due to the rising costs of construction, the design of our parking garage underneath the building built into that hill, it was extremely difficult to get those numbers to work. And so around that same time, we were notified that the building directly to the south, 5700 Broadmoor, was going to be listed for sale. So we were told about that. We took that opportunity to see if there was a way for us to combine both sites together to make the development of our primary objective, the housing project here, more financially feasible. And so what we did was, first we took a look at the building itself as it exists as an office building today. As many of you have heard, the demand for office of 70s, 80s construction of Class B, C type has declined significantly, especially post-COVID, to the point where it might have disappeared altogether. And so we took a look at the building itself. It had typical environmental concerns you would see of a property like this, asbestos, things like that. If you flip to the next slide. We validated the decline in the demand for the office space, and we took a look at the rent roll itself. The building actually sits at just over 80% vacant today, and we expect another tenant in the next few months to vacate for another 7 or 8%. So approaching 90% occupancy really tells us as developers or as potential buyers that the property no longer serves its original purpose as an office building. It's functionally obsolete. It's just no longer the highest and best use of that property today. Next slide. So we engaged our original architect, NSPJ, to lay out the overall site plan on 5700 Broadmoor to both accommodate additional housing and allow us to create a shared parking structure between the two projects. So the structure that we actually came up with as our first run here was a wrap style garage where no parking is adjacent to any streets on the property. So you won't see that parking from any streets. We wrap that garage with units, and the parking will serve actually our first phase, which is approved currently, and this potential second phase to the south. As part of that, I think Aaron touched on it briefly, we wanted to maintain the same level of street activation that I think was communicated to us from this body last year when we were coming through the approvals process on 56 Foxridge. So we did that by creating a front entrance to this new potential phase 2 to the project on Broadmoor to the east. You'll see up at the top of the screen that yellow box on the right side of the page, and then the yellow box in the middle of the screen on the right side of the page with the parking lot. Those are the clubhouse and amenity areas of the project. So future resident parking, the higher levels of glass you'll see on that face as part of the amenity set, all of those things will be visible directly from Broadmoor. Additionally, we created more street level activation through our walkout units that we placed on the south and east side of the building. Those units are typical in some of our more urban projects like 44 Washington on the North Plaza side of KC Mo, and allows residents to enter and exit their units directly from the street, which creates that more neighborhood and urban feel altogether for the street level view of the building. It also allows for additional levels of landscaping and other elements we can incorporate to make just the street level really attractive. Next slide. the two projects together, this is the site plan you'll see for that. The original approved unit count for the 56 Foxridge project on the top of the page was 289 units. The addition of this phase two will actually allow us, depending on that final layout of the site, to add between 335 and 300 and 335 units, we think. So that is a potential total unit count of around 624 units when it's all said and done over two phases. At the end of the day, we think that this potential phase two that we've designed and we laid out here for you today will provide a better street activation than what's on site today. Today at that Broadmoor and 58th Street, instead of walkout units, you see a parking garage essentially and surface level parking. So we think that this will help to make this not only add additional housing to the Johnson Drive corridor and for businesses in that area, but also provide a better buffer between Broadmoor Park and the housing developments to the north and east. It just makes more sense to me in this spot. One unique element of the potential acquisition of 5700 Broadmoor is this parking lot you'll see on the right side of the page on the east side of Broadmoor. It actually is owned by the entity that owns that parking or that office building today. And if purchased, those two run together. So I'll let Aaron take over and touch on that parking lot specifically. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. We go to the next slide, please. This is just a zoomed in aerial of the parking lot itself. One of the things that you might recall from our TIF agreement on 56 and Foxridge is we made an upfront payment to the housing fund as well as the other commitments that we have for 2 Green Globes and then the other elements of the TIF agreement. What we're contemplating here, if this is a project that council likes and would like to see us put forth, is something similar where we would expand the TIF district. We would bring the boundary of that district from 56 and Foxridge down to encompass the 5700 Broadmoor property as well, and largely structure the agreement the same way, amend it the same way in terms of the overall percentages and so forth. The one difference being that in lieu of that upfront payment, dedicating that parking lot to the city of Mission so that that parking lot would become yours and your residents can use that to park in the Broadmoor Park there. So really that was the concept that we wanted to get out there. Would look for feedback both on the plan itself in terms of likes, dislikes, any thoughts about the actual idea of knocking down the office building and building the new residential, as well as the incentive component that we would want to do. So that's what we're here to talk about, and certainly happy to get your thoughts, answer any questions that you might have.
Talk to you about doing a traffic study. You're adding that many units, even with the 289, based on engineering criteria under the Institute of Traffic Engineers. You're supposed to be doing a traffic study.
So, yeah, so they have not submitted any plans for zoning entitlements. So what we wanted to do is because, and we typically will do this before we ask them to sort of commit and invest in that process. We want to give you a preview of what they're anticipating. So that's the purpose of tonight. We don't have preliminary development plans, but stormwater, traffic, all of those things would be components of a submittal in the plan review process. I think if there's anything I missed, Mr. Scott, that accurate. So if it's something that you're interested in entertaining, all of that would come in the next phases along with negotiating a request for incentives.
And also, I noticed that there's approximately 100,000 square feet of impervious surface area. How are we going to deal with that relative to wastewater?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to traffic just for 1 second, if that's okay. A project like this that has roughly 171,000 square feet of office space, typically you're going to want approximately 4 cars per 1,000 square feet of office space. And so if you're doing that math, you're going to have, let's see, what is that? 700 cars coming in and out on a regular basis for something like, I mean, it's approximate, but I'm in the ballpark. And most of the time for an office building, those cars are going to come at 8 and 9 in the morning. They're going to leave at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And so from a traffic study standpoint, sorry, your office traffic is going to have quite a bit higher traffic counts than what your typical multifamily might be. In this case, if you have 300 units, your parking ratio is going to be 1.3 to 1.5. And so you might have 450 to 500 parking spaces for the additional project, right? Taking the existing approved project out of that. And then those people, some work from home, some have different schedules, some are going here, some are going there. And so the traffic patterns actually tend to be reduced for multifamily relative to the peak times that you would see in an office building. I believe that when we looked at that, even though the project that we are building on the north side that's already been approved is more dense and a more dense use of that project, our traffic is actually less at peak times in that scenario. And I would imagine that you'll find the same thing once we actually do the formal study with a traffic engineer, which we're certainly happy to do as part of the process, and make sure that that functions correctly, because we want it to function right as well, right? We don't want residents that can't get in and out of their property. Your next question goes to impervious surfaces. So we've got a close-up aerial here that actually covers a pretty decent amount of the project. And if you look at what's there today, I'm going away from the microphone, I probably shouldn't. You can see that the entire northern portion of that building is one big asphalt impervious surface. Everything south of the Twin Towers there is the garage. It's a deck. It's not a full garage, but it's a deck, also impervious. Maybe compare that with, if we go up back one slide. So we might actually pick up some grassy areas here that don't exist. So part of what Will talked about was taking that garage out from underneath the old building, right? But the garage in this case would serve both properties. And by virtue of doing that, we create the courtyard that's in the middle that, would be exclusive to the residents and that kind of thing. But there's going to be grassy areas that are part of that landscaped area. There's also going to be a pool and things like that, hard surfaces. And then you have the area that's on the south side, the U shape that opens up that way. When we think about our courtyards, when we have two, a lot of times what will happen is one of those courtyards becomes what we like to think of as our active spaces. So pool, music, cabanas, people hanging out, partying, and socializing. And then the other becomes more of your tranquil space. Like I can go outside, I can read a book, I can sip my coffee, that kind of thing. And so the area on the south here actually probably becomes that more tranquil area because you're not by the pool, you're not by the clubhouse, you're not where people are touring the new property, that kind of thing. And so again, that probably lends itself to a more landscaped kind of natural environment. I would guess that just comparing that plan to what's there today, we may actually be better off from a stormwater standpoint than it is today. But obviously, again, we would do the engineering to back that up.
Questions before. I'm asking on every development because we
Yeah.
have 2.5 square miles, and once you put something in place, it's pretty obvious it's not going to go away.
Yeah, I hope.
So some of the questions I'll ask are really prudent to us looking at the total cost of a project, not just what's on paper here, but
Sure.
how many more police will we need to add? And that's not your issue, that's our issue.
Mhm.
624 units in concert with the east end of town with several hundred units. I need to see how many more police and how many public works people will be needed over the course of the next 5 years in these potential developments to get a good idea of the cost it is to the city. And we have to have that kind of, you can't make intelligent decisions without having those types of information in front of you, to me.
Yeah, and for us, if it helps to provide the police incident calls from Royale, Apex, Galleria, Waterside, villas at Waterside, Lenexa and Overland Park, I'm sure have that data. We can tell you how many times they get called out to our properties.
Mayor?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions because it's been a minute on phase one of the deal, but can you remind me what the cash in lieu of payment was on the first plan?
First, was it 250 or 300.
And do you know what that subject parking lot is appraised at?
I wouldn't sell it for 300 if that's what you're asking.
I'm asking what it's appraised at.
Yeah, I don't know what it's appraised at. But maybe Laura knows what she's fighting with some of the folks for some of the parking lots.
So I'm gonna
now.
guess it's lower than that, based on the size and sort of use of the parcel, but I mean, I think overall, if you're talking about a much larger project and the economies of scale that you're gonna get out of the project, especially in light of the fact that we've now had multiple other projects come through since your phase one, also asking for incentives that you're gonna have to put your pencils to paper and make a better deal, at least, for me to be interested. I don't think we should be talking about the same deal for the city when you're gonna be able to bring down, your costs a lot and moving the parking structure and getting double the amount of units and, buying that office tower for what I'm sure is a song. And so, I think we're gonna really need to see a more thoughtful approach in terms of, having it be a better deal for the city if you're going to be getting, a lot of these benefits and doubling the project.
Yeah, I can tell you a couple of things just to maybe points of comparison. One, we could certainly look and see what the size of that parking lot is compared to the size of the other lot that was donated. Prior to our deal, there was another deal you guys did where you traded a piece of ground and what that was worth. I would tell you, I think that site is actually probably worth more than 300,000 if you just had to say, hey, like you have to buy it. I can also tell you that we are paying more on a per square foot basis for the 5700 building, but I can tell you that the cost to tear that building down is going to be way more significant than the cost to tear down the old JCPenney call center because it's a high rise and you've got the structured parking deck. And so if you look at the total project cost in terms of what we're going to be in the dirt, it will probably be almost double on a per square foot basis for this piece as it will be for the other one. And I can do the math on that and tell you, but you can get the building for a discounted price. And certainly we're not paying, replacement costs for a 1970s office building because no one would ever build one today.
Sure.
But we are going to be in the dirt for almost twice as much on a per square foot basis once it comes to tearing the building down. And that assumes that we can get a couple of other things worked out.
If that's truly the case, how are you making it pencil when you can't make it pencil now? That doesn't make sense if it's equivalent, if it's double the cost.
Well, part
for
of it is, like you said, you take the garage out from underneath the old building and you put it on the ground and you do a precast garage, right? So you're bringing in concrete panels that they poured somewhere else, as opposed to pouring an in-place garage where you're form fitting the pool that goes on the top of that deck and everything else. And by the way, when you have a pool on the top of that deck, your garage has to be 14 feet tall because you have to have 4 feet for the pool to come down, which means you're heating and cooling a lot more space. The podium style building is very nice because it gives you the flexibility to do whatever you want on top of it. It's also the most expensive that you can do, which is why in Kansas City, our podiums are at Apex, they're at Galleria, and those kinds of things. But I can tell you that the way that you make it work is, one, you do get more economies of scale by doing 600 units compared to 300 units. But you also save money on both projects by not doing a podium in each case, and by bringing it into a panelized garage.
So that does sound like some cost savings, not double the cost for double the units.
No, I'm saying double the land cost.
Just on the land cost.
The
Okay.
land component. When you say, hey, you're buying this building for a song, I'm telling you, the building is one part of, and by the way, the building price divided by the land square footage is gonna be more here than it was on the north side. But then you add in $2 million to tear that thing down on top of that, and then you add in the money it's gonna take to move the other tenants that are still in there, some other things like that. You're gonna be in probably twice per square foot on the land value that you are on the first project. I'm gonna guess when it all comes down to, you're gonna be able to bring the cost per unit of the other ones down a little bit, and these are gonna be about the same level that you can bring those down to, and that may put you in the strike zone. If you think about like what capital requires to build and what it takes to go raise institutional equity, I would guess that we're 150 to 175 basis points income to cost away from being able to do the north phase. So if we can get it down a hair, call it 20,000 a unit, we get closer to being able to get that to the level that you can raise institutional capital. And each one of these deals, I mean, north side and south side both, they're $100 million a piece or more, right? Like that's what it is. So you don't do these projects by getting your friends and family together. You don't do this by passing the hat around. You have to go get institutional capital. These are pension fund advisors. These are life insurance companies. These are all names you know. And in order to attract capital, you've got to meet that metric. If we could meet that metric with the incentives that we have on 56 and Foxridge, we would be under construction, right? We're not sitting on dirt and carrying that every year so that, we can just enjoy the pleasure of doing that. Like we would be building a project today if it worked. When this came along, we thought, hey, this could be a great opportunity to get some additional scale, try to bring the cost of phase one into the strike zone that we can get that project going. And oh, by the way, now we have some economies of scale going forward for operations where, when you have 600 units, maybe instead of having 4 people on staff here and 4 people on staff here in the office, right? It's 1 per 100 plus 1. That's the math on how you staff an office on an apartment complex. Maybe instead of having 8 people per 600 units, you can get away with 7 because your temp leasing person can go back and forth, something like that. Same thing with the maintenance team. It's usually 1 per 100 plus 1. And so instead of having 8 maintenance people, you might have 7, right? So you see those little increments of savings. Similarly, your marketing budget, right? If you're getting people to the door, you're spending the same dollar to get them to one versus the other. So instead of each project having a $100,000 marketing budget a year, maybe they both spend 60 and you save some money that way, right? So that's how you start to get these things to where you kind of get all of the numbers to a point where you can raise the institutional capital that would make it work.
Let me just, that parking lot on the east side of Broadmoor is currently appraised at $445,000.
Ben, then Mary.
Yeah, thank you. I expect you're ready for some good news, so I'll bring a little bit of that. But it is true that I think that with this body, I expect this to live and die based on whether we feel like the financial deal is a good one for the city. That said, when I heard that you guys had your eyeballs on this south parcel, my heart leapt, and I'll tell you why. It's a parcel that I think to me represents a challenge for land use and for making Mission look like the city that we want it to look like. This is an area of town, I think that honestly, with just the original first phase, I was a little concerned that it was kind of hanging out on its own, a little bit isolated, right? Even if it was sort of well activated on paper in a vacuum, maybe difficult to envision a lot of just foot traffic and the kind of land use and urban character that I think we're hoping to see, or at least I'm hoping to see. So this to me represents exactly what the initial proposal needed all along, and I'm glad you've brought it. To see the structured parking for, what is it, 600 plus units, I think is a breath of fresh air. I thought the other parking lot, until you just mentioned it, was going to be surface parking for tenants, and you're saying no, that's just bonus. So even better. So for me, this is tremendous land use in an area that I find to be very challenging for land use. All the other details, the devil's in the details. And I think you probably have your work cut out for you with the council and beyond just me, but I'm a fan. I think this is what the first phase needed to add the whole time. So I'm glad to see this.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to echo a lot of your sentiment. As someone who worked out of that building for 3 years, I will not be sad to see it go. It certainly isn't necessarily modern or I guess even really usable for what we would consider office sake these days. And I do think that kind of adding more population to this end of the city isn't a bad idea also, and kind of creating more screening around some of those residential areas. So I'm definitely not against adding, especially because it feels like kind of this end of the city has a lot of new structures going up, kind of activating that area, I think would be a reasonable addition to the city. So yeah, I definitely share similar thoughts. And yeah, that's all.
Mayor?
Yeah, I don't know how far along you are in design, and so maybe this ship has sailed, but I actually work right by your Lenexa project. I work in one of the office buildings adjacent to that project. And I appreciate that it is really open and there's sort of, it relates the buildings around it and everything. And I worry sort of about this fortress-esque construction and if you're going to get some of the benefits fully realized that Ben's talking about. And I mean, and I don't know how others would react to this, but I would rather see it be taller and more open than closed all the way around itself with the courtyard and the amenities sort of locked inside. But
We can go to the elevations from the prior, so this gives you kind of a unit plan, but if we can go back to the images from the prior, this is really the intent would be to carry the design through. So in terms of addressing the street, in terms of building materials, in terms of what that looks like, we would carry that forward. The one big difference here, I think that Will touched on, is that the entry in the clubhouse on the 56th and Foxridge faces Metcalf. And we know that was part of the conversation, and it was just how that site ended up having to be designed.
is that the bottom left image?
So
Yeah.
that would be the
Okay.
bottom left image. And if you take that and you now orient that piece of it onto Broadmoor at the southern end for this phase two, that's gonna hopefully create that open, inviting, it's a place to park. If you're a
Okay.
guest,
So that's
you
what
can-
the southern end will look more like. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, the idea would be that we are not only activating it with the amenity spaces like we talked about on the first phase, but your actual front door, where you come to lease a unit, that kind of thing would be there on the east side facing Broadmoor. So maybe we go to the slide that has the yellow, the clubhouse as well. It shows the unit plans and then it's got the yellow box. There you go. Oh, back one. Here we go. So if you look, the big yellow box that's on the east side has the parking spaces in front of it. Think gym, think co-working space for the residents, think leasing area, mail room when you walk in. It's got the package room. Everybody gets their Amazon packages there. Drives our staff crazy, but that's what that is. And then if you go to some of our other projects, the visual that we try to create in that clubhouse, the place you go to lease a unit, you walk in, and first of all, we actually normally make that an elevated height. So even if the first floor has 10-foot ceilings or whatever for the units, we actually drop the floor down of the clubhouse so it's 11 or 12 feet. You glass in the front, but you also glass in the back. And the reason you glass in the back is so that from the street or from walking in the front door, you can see that resort style pool. You can see the fire pit and the bowls and people having a good time. And that's the visual that you want. So if you go to Royale or if you go to any of our other communities where you can walk in and do that, it's a great leasing tool for us, but it's a good visual from the street in terms of how you do that. So we're glad to be able to, in this case, orient that onto the Broadmoor side.
Because the Apex project is the one that you can see from the highway and it has the big glowing light and stuff. Do I have that one right?
Well, you can see Apex and Royale from 69.
From 69.
They both sit next to each other.
Yeah.
So they are immediately west of the office buildings that have the light across the top,
Okay.
the light bands and things like that.
Because I would say like Apex has a very different feel than like the waterside residences on Quivira. And so just trying to make it less like this block that's its own inclusive thing.
So when you're rendering here, on the far south end, is that courtyard actually open?
Yeah,
I
don't
mean,
know if-
it would be
it-
not open to the
obviously
public,
visually it'll be.
but visually open.
I don't know if it would be fenced across the southern end or if it wouldn't. Like, we'd have to study that. It kind of depends on what we put in that space. Obviously, we're early in programming that, but I do think that the southern courtyard is going to be more of your tranquil space. You design the landscaping so you have your hammock or your little chair and you can go out there and you can kind of have your Zen moment and you put speakers in the rocks and that kind of stuff. So I think that would be kind of our tranquil courtyard compared to like your in the middle where you want to go and hang out with your neighbors and that kind of thing. We will also incorporate somewhere in there some type of pet amenity space our residents have yappy hour. They bring their six-pack and their dog and they hang out. And so you want to create that sense of community where they get to know each other and things like that.
Any other questions from the council?
I just wanted to know, are we going to have to change the zoning since that was an office building? Now that we're having apartments, how does that work?
This whole area is part of the form-based code, the West Gateway form-based code.
It
So
was what? I'm sorry.
the West Gateway form-based code,
Oh,
that's an kind of overlay district for the west side of town. And that West Gateway form-based code really speaks to creating that urban environment that we've been talking about tonight with activation along the street and more pedestrian-oriented feel, kind of moving away from the parking lots and that sort of auto-centric feel that you have over there right now. So the original project that Block proposed that was approved followed the West form-based code, and this will as well. So when we review that, when they submit their plans, when we review that, we'll be reviewing those plans against the West form-based code, West Gateway form-based code. So
It did not mandate an office building use for that.
the underlying zoning doesn't really matter anymore. You're now looking at the zoning for the overlay district. It's confusing, I know.
So I think if I can, Brian, you can correct me if I get this wrong, but the form-based code goes more to sort of the look and feel and design and the intent of creating this more urban activated environment. And if you meet the sort of design parameters, there's broader uses. So that commercial parcel, that office building parcel is not restricted in the current zoning to staying an office parcel. It would allow for a residential use of this form. Is that all right, Brian?
Right.
I don't know if that makes more or less sense, but.
The form of the building is the driver.
I
Not
get,
that use in the sense of traditional.
Yeah.
So if I have an industrial, this is an extreme example, right? But you're looking at that form and shape and compliance with things like activation with the street, pushing the building closer to the street, all of those things, as opposed to in a traditional zoning sense, you would be looking at what is that underlying zoning district and how does that relate and do we need to change that?
Yes, really the intent of the form-based code is not so much the use of the land, but more how the building is designed so it can be used for multiple purposes over
yeah,
time.
I'm getting that. I'm just, my confusion is how is it that we have a MS2 and a DNJ or DGA or whatever, whatever,
Mm.
and this is different. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, that,
And maybe you need to take me and set an appointment for me to understand that, but it doesn't seem to,
we can certainly do that, but that's a lot of the reason why we're updating the code.
that's what?
It's a lot of the reason why we're updating the zoning code.
Oh, is because of this.
Yeah, it's very confusing right now, and it's just been hodgepodge, and so you get this
Yeah. I
kind of
got it.
confusing mumble jumble of zoning districts that don't quite work together, and they're kind of confusing to those who just aren't really familiar with zoning.
I just have one other question and then I think I'm done. It's my understanding, and I have a little bit of trouble hearing because you guys, when you talk, your tenor is different or I can't hear it. But it's my understanding that you're going to give us a parking lot instead of paying us some money. Is that what I got? Is that correct?
Yeah, the idea would be, there were a couple of different requirements. I'll try to speak directly in the microphone so you hear me.
Thank you.
There were a couple of different requirements that were part of the TIF agreement that we made on the phase one project. And those requirements included environmental standards that we have to meet. And they also included a contribution to the city. I don't think it's restricted, but I think the intent was to allow the city to use that for some sort of affordable housing or to supplement housing in some way. And the proposal would be to expand the TIF district under effectively the same terms as as previous. So same environmental requirements that we would have in lieu of the upfront payment. The donation of the lot that's adjacent to your park would be the proposed solution, and obviously looking to get feedback for that. We haven't done an appraisal. The county has the appraised value. You said, Laura, at 445,000. So that would be about 150% of what we initially made as a payment last time.
But do we need that parking lot? I mean, who's going to park in it? Especially since
We can do anything with that. You know, we can do anything with that land. We don't have to use it as a parking lot, right? We could develop housing or make it parkland or whatever we like, right?
We have historically used the 5,700 like building parking for like events at Broadmoor Park, correct?
Correct.
So I guess we could, continue using it as a parking structure if we needed it. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk without.
Wanda, let me just give you a quick example because I have the ward that has the west part. The form-based code was designed to maximize and look at density. For instance, the Popeyes that burned and was rebuilt in the form-based code, the requirement for the restaurant is on one level. They don't need anything, but it was built to a different story to allow density. And if anything else needs to go in there, it can be without rebuilding. So it's maximizing the space that we have and looking at density issues. And it's only in the west part.
Okay, Brian.
Well, I
Okay.
think what the issue is, I don't think the audio, since he's online, it's not feeding back through. So I will just share his comment real quick and just note that as someone who also worked in the building, he seconds Councilmember Ryherd's comments as well as Councilmember Chosie's, and just with the new phase, kind of tying it back to the development going towards Johnson Drive and engaging that space more.
Any other comments online or, okay. Laura, do you have any other follow-up? Okay. Are we okay? Okay. Thank you for your presentation, answering our questions.
Thank you for your time and your chocolates.
Okay. All right. Proceeding along, our first action item this evening is in the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Robin Folks.
Yes, thank you. Draft minutes of the January 14th Community Development Committee meeting were included for review and acceptance in your packet tonight.
Recommend acceptance on consent.
Okay, consent agenda. Thank you. Our second action item this evening is for approval of the adoption of the Safe Streets and Roads for All Comprehensive Safety Action Plan from Stephanie Boyce.
Good evening. Well, thank you all. We are here to discuss the adoption of the Safe Streets and Roads for All Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. And for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to shorten that to CSAP and SS4A. In 2023, Mission received some federal funding and KDOT funding for a Safe Streets and Roads, well, SS4A CSAP. Funding was specifically for the development of the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. And the purpose of that was to reduce crashes, serious injuries, and fatalities. I want to throw that slide up. I have a presentation too. And then improve safety for all roadway users in the city of Mission. In March of 2025, well, prior to March of 2025, I think it was towards the end of 2024, we issued a request for qualifications from consultants. And in March 2025, the council awarded and we entered into a professional agreement with our consultant Burns and McDonnell. And I have Howard and Drew in the audience, and they'll be up here shortly after. So they were selected as our consultant to move forward with this plan to analyze local crash data to identify those high risk locations and behaviors, to engage the stakeholders and incorporate public input. If you remember, we had a really nice website design that you were all able to take surveys and
use the pinpoint map. So that data-driven, community-informed approach ensured that the plan reflects Mission's unique roadway network. And I think the next slide we have just a map of that. So our roadway network is really everything in the dashed lines minus everything in red, which are KDOT owned roads. So that is our network and our roadway system. And address community priorities and provide practical implementable safety strategies. So the CSAP will serve as a guiding document and it help inform policy decisions, prioritize future safety projects, and support and strengthen future grant applications. The funding came from the IIJA grant that was implemented for 2022 to 2026. So we're nearing the end of that cycle. We have one more round. Notice of funding should come out, I imagine, in the next few months, maybe. So this will help possibly set us up for some implementation or demonstration grants. A draft CSAP was provided to the council to review and provide feedback. It was also attached in the agenda item, so anybody in the public could also review that. And upon adoption, this will also be posted to our Safe Streets website that's out there. And so the next step is really just the formal adoption in this process, and that's required to complete these grant requirements. And with that, we have some more slides that our consultants will walk through and will tie into the CSAP that you all had. And after that, we will take some questions. And I do have Officer Chuddick here too, if we have any questions related to our safety traffic division. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Howard Lubliner from the Burns and McDonald team. First of all, didn't mean to be coy in answering Stephanie's questions about the next round of funding. The current administration just slightly less predictable about when these things come out. It is part of the IIJA funding, but it's just they don't always do a great job of letting us know when it's going to come. But yes, Stephanie was correct that this does, completion of this plan will set you up for additional funding opportunities. And though KDOT has not announced it, we believe that their state matching will continue for this next round as it has for previous rounds. And so I'm here representing our consultant team today. Drew Matrician ran our stakeholder engagement. We had a bunch of folks on the back end who also helped us and who you've seen throughout this process. I will say today, hopefully a lot of faces that I've seen before, very little new things that will be coming at you that you haven't seen before. And so we did, we have some reiteration of things we talked about. And I will say, happy to go through those things, happy to talk through them. But as much as anything, just have that as a framework so that if you do have questions, if there were pieces of the plan, once you saw it published in writing formally, please do stop me and do ask any questions that you have. Because most of all, we want to make sure that this is a document that you all can use that will serve your community going forward. Next slide. So this is one thing that we have newly crafted. It is a requirement to get your federal grant, which I imagine you all want that money, is that you do have to make some sort of commitment towards a zero fatality. That can look a lot of different ways. And so we did work with city staff to think about your actual current crash experience, and then also, what the city wanted to work on aspirationally in terms of setting a goal. So this is a goal that is specific to the city of Mission. You mercifully, in most years, do not have a traffic fatality within the city. So congratulations, don't really need to reduce that, but let's try to keep that at zero. But there are still a fair number of serious injury crashes that do happen in the city. And so making a commitment to reduce those, and you can see a 50% reduction by 2030. So there will have to be some action to formally adopt that goal if you have not already. These are the required components of a CSAP, as Stephanie mentioned. I will say, and I think I've mentioned to this group again previously, for a federal program, it is a largely open-ended how we could and went about accomplishing these things. So at every turn, we did try to customize the safety analysis, the engagement, the policy review, to be specific for the city of Mission, the types of things that you have going on in your community and the needs, as opposed to just some cookie cutter type approaches. Next slide. So here you can see the actual safety performance for the city of Mission. Unfortunately, or at the time, we didn't have 2024 data, but you can see, in keeping with, a lot of statewide trends, certainly at the start of COVID, things picked up a little bit. And you can see that while the total number of crashes have gone down a fair amount, the number of serious injury crashes have not gone down at nearly the same pace. And so that is a lot of the things that this plan tries to address. First of all, vulnerable road user crashes. Anytime a car impacts a cyclist or a pedestrian, that's likely going to end in some sort of injury. So we want to do our best to address those, and that's incorporated in here. And then a lot of the other high severity crashes and locations that we figured out throughout the study. Next slide. I will do my best.
You'll know. In the vulnerable
Road user
population, when we say bicycles, does that include motorcycles and scooters as well, or are those considered full-on vehicles now?
Motorcycles have traditionally been in like the vehicle piece.
Excellent.
And increasingly, one of the reasons why we say vulnerable users, I say bicyclists, and I probably need to get away from that as much as I can't remember what the current term of art is, but yes, scooters, e-bikes, all of that would fall into that vulnerable road user category.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. You can see that we went about data analysis in a few different ways. First of all, we looked at it geospatially. So where are the locations where we're having a lot of high severity crashes in the city? You don't need to be a safety transportation specialist to know, hey, where we have a lot of cars, we also have a lot of crashes and high severity crashes. So you will see amongst a lot of your busiest and highest speed facilities is where there are a lot of high severity crashes. And as Stephanie talked about in terms of that, when we looked at that roadmap to begin with, one of the things we made a strategic focus on when we started this is to say, this document should be focused on the places where the city of Mission has autonomy to make decisions to make improvements for your community. It speaks to the need to still work with your neighbors and with the KDOT to advocate for improvements of these roads that do have a lot of severities, but all of the actual tangible improvement recommendations are on those places where you do have autonomy. And then we did look at a number of different cross sections. You would be amazed at how when you just cross a city line, even in Johnson County, how the nature, timing, severity of crashes can change from community to community. And so we do try to slice the crashes a lot of different ways just to think about and see if there are some trends that stand out about your specific community. Next slide. One thing which is not atypical of communities, but is good to note, is that 50% of all crashes happen at intersections, and especially of high severity crashes. And so you will see a lot in here of focus on intersections, intersection related treatments. And that is because that is where a majority of your crashes and high severity crashes are happening. And so we're looking at a lot of side impact improvements. So you probably saw that there were some left turn movement recommendations, right turn movement prohibitions, things like that to help us reduce the things which are the greatest drivers of your crashes. And so, and we can go back one slide real quick. Yep. And I know maybe there were some preliminary questions about this next graph in terms of we charted things based on their crash records. So what you see up here is what was cited in a crash record in terms of the nature of that crash. We did not actually dive into the citations themselves, the number of citations that were being included. So this is just in terms of crashes. I will say Officer Chuddick was an incredible member. We did have an advisory committee that included police, fire, parks in that. I mean, he was along for all of those discussions, was a great participated and offered a lot of just practical experience, from the city police in terms of their safety experience. And so while we did not have citation data that we looked at, we certainly did include their perspective in the study.
Is that where some of the areas that seemed mostly speed focused as opposed to accident focused fit in? Like I'm thinking about like Knoll Drive. I don't think we've actually had accidents, but there's been, neighborhood concerns about speeding. So is that kind of where some of those pieces came from? Was that officer input and community input?
Yes. And so I would say, y'all, in terms of a community where your public who respond to things, your elected officials and your staff all seem to walk in line in terms of some of the things that were concerned. So one of the things that we did hear resoundingly from that whole cross-section was the issue of speeding. That Mission is not a place that we're here for you to drive through quickly. And so a lot of the treatments that we had, and we were probably more aggressive in this community than others than in recommending safety-focused things that may slow operations a little bit, but towards the goal of speeding. Speeding also is a great thing when we're talking about serious injuries, because not only does it reduce potentially the number of crashes, but the severity of crashes. Next slide. So this is the stakeholder piece. You may remember, and it came out as a link in the city newsletter. We had a couple pop-up events to promote it, but we really tried to funnel a lot of feedback to our online responses. We had both a virtual map and some questions that people were able to answer. We had 135 online survey responses, 190 different map points, and more than 150 different people that engaged us during our pop-up events. So did have a lot of very good engagement. I appreciate that it was not a statistically significant sample size necessarily, but I dug out my college statistics book because I knew this question would come up. And I can verify that it was 20.
How old is math?
Yes, it did creak a lot when I opened it up. But I can tell you that, yes, when I show you the next slide and it shows you a 97%, is that 97% or 92%? Maybe squishy, but the trends that we make decisions based on here and the sample size that we got certainly were indicative of the direction and the nature of things that were going on. Next slide. So, and again, back to a lot of what we heard in this community is that people generally feel safe in driving through Mission. People feel less safe walking and even less safe biking. And so this was incredibly important in the plan. And we talked to various communities about this, is that really we want this plan to be data-driven. So that was the beginning slides we saw on the heat map. When we are talking about vulnerable road users, when we're talking about not just the current people who are biking and walking in your community, but all the people who would like to do more biking and walking, that data is not going to help us identify those locations. Data is not going to help us solve those problems. So you will see within all of our recommendation a mix of the hard data and some of the public responses that we got, so that at a given location, it may not be a data-driven, like we had a lot of these crashes, but we had 4 people that said, hey, we almost got hit by somebody making a right turn here. Just because no one's been hit yet didn't mean that recommendation didn't make it into the piece. Cool, next slide. Yep, and so here you can see from a data side, you'll see lots of intersections, looking at side impact and rear ends. And then again, driver inattention has been a key issue. It was mentioned a lot. This is a national trend. There are some challenges with enforcing this consistently. But I will say that, again, this is where speed management can be helpful, because even if you are not attentive, being inattentive at 25 miles an hour versus 40 miles an hour does make a big difference. And then again, the priorities that we heard about: speeding, inattention, intersection sight distance, lack of safe crossing opportunities, and lack of bike and walking infrastructure.
I did notice that there weren't any actual speed limit reduction recommendations. Is that because of compliance issues and the standards, or?
Yes. we had the opportunity to actually do a comprehensive citywide speed study for the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And frankly, one of the most interesting scatter graphs I've ever made in my career. It turns out, at least for a very large sample size to your east, that the posted speed limit has almost no impact on the actual speed that people are driving. And so, I mean, like literally zero. It's amazing. But for that reason, like we do not, I mean, speed limits are helpful, but in the places where we're really trying to enforce slower speeds, you'll see things like chicanes, curb bulb outs, things that are more trying to physically limit and provide that sort of visual cue, as opposed to a speed limit, which frankly is only going to be followed if the officers are there en masse. So, oh, great question. So this is the map. And you can see the corridors and priority intersections that we did identify. Stephanie did tell me that one question came up about, you know, the 80% of this area of the city that is not covered in this, in the residential area. And so one thing I will just tell you is that a big reason, so this, everything you see here is the locations where the data and the public input told us action is needed at these locations. But the nature of crashes in residential areas is just a lot more scattered. And really, the likelihood that you're going to have any single residential intersection with even 2 or 3 crashes in a short time is unlikely. So one of the things we did is when we identified the Millhaven neighborhood as a location for sort of like neighborhood-wide speed reduction treatments, that was meant to be a bit of a pilot for the city to say, okay, let's take a section of neighborhood. We can't do the whole city all at once. Let's do that all at one time. It was the section of the city in terms of residential neighborhoods that had the most public input. There were a lot of folks that cited that neighborhood, a lot of citations about cut through traffic, people trying to duck busy arterials to do that. So there is that opportunity. And then also, and we'll talk about here at the end, there is a toolbox that's provided, which is meant to be a sort of reactive tools that the city can use in the future as opportunities do come up. So if there is a single residential intersection or a couple of intersections that come up year to year, they will have that list of toolbox. And hopefully, you know, if funding is available to do the Millhaven sort of a proof of concept of what is effective for a neighborhood. Cool. Next slide. So this is not a comprehensive list. This is just a visual sort of demonstration list of some of the types of treatments that we offered at intersections. You know, I do think a lot of speed tables. So we, a lot of debate about sort of vertical projections, the nature of those, speed bumps, speed humps, those sort of things. Speed tables seem to be sort of universally popular, both in terms of the public and people who have to plow snow. So that was probably a more frequent piece. You'll see a lot of like pedestrian signing, RRFBs, a lot of right turn restrictions. There are better technologies now. I think even some of your intersections have like a static sign that says no right turn of pedestrian present, which is a helpful start. But you can now have ones that light up and are actuated when people press the button. You can actually even have sensors that can sense if a pedestrian is there and turn them on. And that just creates a lot better compliance. So those things. And then it is not necessarily popular from an operational standpoint, but turning to a dedicated left turn. So you can only turn left when you see that green arrow. There is no opportunity to sort of slide through the intersection. Makes you wait a little bit longer, but does dramatically reduce those side angle crashes that we talked about. So next slide. And then we had Johnson Drive, Lamar, and 60th Street, all with various sort of, again, speed-related, pedestrian-related type improvements. I will say this, one of the directions also that we talked about with staff when we started is we didn't think it'd be beneficial to say like, hey, here's $60 million worth of improvements that you all need. Like here's some big, you know, blowing up the curb type improvements. they wanted to focus on things that could be implementable over a reasonable time frame of this study. So a lot of the treatments that you see are meant to be lower cost, sort of high impact for the locations that they serve type of improvements. Next slide. And then this is the part about the toolbox that I mentioned. Again, as crashes tend to vary when you cross the state line, feelings about the different treatments that are appropriate for a community can change. And so we did have some great cross-sectional discussions, not just with staff, but with key stakeholders about what treatments they wanted to see within the city of Mission. And so we have customized that toolbox for treatments that people, staff felt would be good and are customized to your city, its nature, the types of crashes you're having. So we don't have like rural treatments or curve signs or things that just are not relative to that. And then each treatment does talk about its cost to implement, the appropriate sort of applications for it. And again, so city can have that sort of quick reference guide in the future should issues arise. Next slide. And then we did actually work with the planning department as well on a couple of different planning things. So we did review a couple of your existing policies and made some recommendations in terms of wording in the policies that might be considered for including this safety treatments and vulnerable road user considerations in the future. We did assist, I know the city is working on a complete streets policy statement or something like that, and we provided some best practices for implementation of complete streets policies. So did some parallel work on the policy side. And what we like to say is trying to make safety simple, right? So if you update your policy now, developers and whoever else comes in knows what your community expects from a safety standpoint. So you don't have folks build something and then you have to come back and fix it a few years down the line. Cool. And then there is a commitment within the plan, one of the required pieces about the city's commitment to adhere to the plan. And so, again, we don't necessarily recommend to people that they track data, crash data as a means to how well you're doing, because some of the things you'll do over the next 3 years may not bear fruit for another, 5 to 10. And so there is a commitment that the public works staff will visit with you on an annual basis about of the recommendations, what things have been programmed, what things have been done, what elements from the toolbox have been included in that in terms of their annual public works updates. And I think that is it. So,
Are there any other questions? Okay.
First of all, I really do think this is a well-written, really well substantiated data that you've gotten here. I really am very impressed.
Awesome.
However, I have a couple questions, and one of them is, I know that there's something in there about ride. I think it's drive, ride, walk. And my concern is that these e-bikes and these scooters are just now starting to be a really big deal. And I don't really see that they're addressed in this plan. And I really think we need to do that, not just for the kids, but for older people too. I see older people using that. And I don't know that, I'm not saying that you didn't address it, but it doesn't sound like it because it's not articulated well. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
That is fair. I will say that most all of the body of knowledge that we have put in here are based on like statistically proven countermeasures that have been successful. The issue that you're talking about is ostensibly so new that there are not really a lot of like best practices for, communities that have done X, Y, or Z. And so, I mean, I think that we can certainly happy to include, in our auxiliary piece to this.
At least an articulation that you're aware.
Yes.
And that you've thought of that when you think about.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I think is fair.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know the county is looking at that.
Oh, yes. No, and I mean, there have been some very high profile, unfortunately, fatalities in, these neighborhoods. And and there are communities who have started to restrict e-bikes, both in terms of their
Well,
usage.
usually
their
there's
speed.
law. I mean, they're looking at policies
Yeah.
as to who can get them and what age. And I mean, this is all just quite, yeah.
Oh.
The other thing is that despite these other places that don't have control, we don't have control over that. Does that not mean we don't have influence on? I mean, and I'm not sure that that is articulated in the plan either.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of, you sort of say it. I mean, you sort of imply it, but it'd be nice if we had a statement that said we are aware that we're not responsible, but we acknowledge that we need to influence these decisions or something like
Yeah.
that.
Understand. And I believe that was certainly the intent of it. And so we can go back and make sure that's
Okay.
articulated.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mayor?
Oh, yeah, I just had related to Wanda's last point. I did have a question about sort of alignment with the federal funding on that piece. And I just wanted to make sure that the Safe Streets for All, in terms of the plan, that it's okay to exclude all of those streets that aren't under our control, or should there be, yeah, like Wanda's saying, like an appendix or something that recommends like, here's what we would like to see here, but we understand we only have, limited influence, not full control over these other streets that are major issues in our city.
Yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility. I think especially, I mean, all of the streets that we excluded are highways. They are not even of your ownership or joint ownership. And so, yes, there is a lot of flexibility there. Communities have gone about that different ways, just depending on sort of its piece, but we can make sure that whatever that statement is, I mean, yes, it is compliant to say, KDOT, y'all need to figure that out. But
Yeah, sort of on that front, this is kind of an outside ask, just to anybody in the room, really. Part of what I would hope to get or push back on through, this process, this grant program, Safe Streets for All, the whole thing is, yeah, we need help from the top to exert leverage on those things we can't control, but that affect our communities. So just to bold and double underline that, like, when we run into these issues on KDOT rights of way and things that, we can't move the needle on, can't afford to move the needle on, even if we had control over it. I suppose I'm really speaking at this point to the federal government, but you all are in some way trickling down some representation of them at the moment. So that's my first thought. Yeah, I don't know if you look like you wanted to respond there, so I'll pause.
I will say this, the state of Kansas is better than many about making their federal safety funds available to local communities in a number of different ways. And so I do think that there is certainly an opportunity to say, hey, KDOT, we see that these, roads are an issue. Can we jointly seek funding? Can we leverage some of these federal funds to be here? And the safety group is, the KDOT safety group has been proactive about, they do, even though they actually own those roads, they are here to reduce fatalities in the state of Kansas, independent of the location. And so I do think there is an opportunity. And I will say that we did use KDOT's own analyses, their dashboards, to generate some of this. We use their VRU study. And so I do think just reflecting back to them that, that the work that we did is not novel. It is an extension of some of their own findings.
Yeah, and I hear those things loud and clear. I've seen that certainly myself, and in the last years, I've learned a bit more about how KDOT works and how some of the different parts of that organization are moving the needle and helping with that. But it's still a tough pill to look at the Ike plan and see roads, and everything else. So on to the plan itself, the CSAP itself. Maybe I wasn't clear with myself what to expect, but I was blown away by the thoroughness and the actionability and again the substantiation behind this report, and just how I don't know, where it needed to be visionary, it was visionary. Where it needed to maintain some restraint, it maintained restraint. We've seen a lot of, I think, plans and studies and things, and this just seemed quite well targeted and well informed. So I appreciate that level of rigor. And I think those are my 2 comments.
I really thought the definitions at the end was very, very helpful, because when I was reading through it, I goes, and then it was at the end.
Yeah.
So It really was. I really do think it was a well done study.
Appreciate it.
I'm not happy with this sample size.
Yes.
And plus, I'm not sure that noticed that I mean, is there a place where where you tell us what percent of the population was from where? I didn't see that there, which would have been helpful to me. For an instance, the reason that we chose Millhaven is because more people responded from there, which kind of makes sense. That kind of, so that I have an idea of who's being served and who isn't.
Yes, that is fair. And I cannot remember off the top of my head if we did, let me double check if we asked people certainly whether they were, and ultimately they could be folks who visit Mission as opposed to Mission residents. And so I recall that we had that question. I do not remember exactly, but let me double check on what we have for those statistics.
We could target the people we didn't get.
Understand, yes.
I think one just thing, to Council Member Vaughn's question or point about scooters and e-bikes. This is certainly not, I know the mayor and I have talked about as we've watched legislation in some of our neighboring communities over the last 12 to 18 months. We've talked about the need or the desire for that here. And so there, I think, will be opportunities in the coming months or year for us to come back and revisit some of those issues and how we may want to regulate those similarly.
And I think, Wanda, as you mentioned, there is I think a county group now looking at that. Individual cities have taken action. I know Leawood just passed a helmet law, but I know at least in the past, Bike Walk KC has been opposed to helmet laws due to uneven enforcement along like racial and socioeconomic lines. And so I think there's some, potentially competing considerations of resources, and what is actually the best solution. But I think continuing to have our eye on it and looking more at what could we be doing is a really important point.
But I do think that because we've got this study, that we need to mention it. They need to articulate it. I mean, not what we're doing, but that we're aware of it, and that because, I mean, it's on the front, it's on the forefront, and if we're looking for money, we need to acknowledge that we're looking ahead.
Yep.
That's all.
I did have one question. There. I did have one question about one of the specific recommendations, because overall I thought they made a lot of sense, but I did want to point out that I at least personally thought the back end parking on Johnson Drive was a little odd given our lane reductions and some of our other competing community goals, like being a community for all ages. I'm thinking of my parents who are in their 70s and have 15-year-old vehicles that don't have backup cameras, and now you're going to be asking them in rush hour traffic to be, backing into parking spaces. So I think there just might have been a couple things that didn't seem entirely fit for purpose to me, where I would want to hear more on how that solution sort of worked with the overall street design.
Sure. Yeah, and I will say that this was something that we did have some debate about, and actually was, I think, vetted with, we talked with our stakeholder groups a little bit about this. It is a challenge. There are backing accidents that do happen on Johnson Drive currently, like that it is
I don't doubt that. I'm just not convinced that you'd have fewer if you're having people trying to back into parking spots, say during rush hour when there's one lane of traffic in each direction, that's going to improve that situation. I mean, obviously you guys are the experts, but that was the only one where I looked at it. I was like, you tell businesses that's what's going to be going on with the parking in front of their buildings. Like, people are going to lose their minds. And so that was sort of the only one where I was like, I don't know about that.
Yes. And I can't remember the exact wording. I think that we did try to caveat that as more loosely than our other countermeasure reductions for that reason. And unfortunately, there just really are just not a lot of countermeasures that address that one specific crash type other than that. But I will say that that is, again, where speed reduction comes in tremendously helpful, which is to say, if we're just going to keep backing out of parking spaces, which is a very sort of natural and understandable thing, that people going slower will reduce the likelihood that they happen. And when they do happen, they'll happen at a lower severity.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And like all the stuff about the increased speed tables and the better, higher end pedestrian signage and, elevated crosswalks and all of that, I thought made total sense. I think one thing that I've had questions with that I'd be interested in getting your guys' opinion on, if there is anything that can be done is we have a ton of people. I mean, I see it every day, both direction, crossing the double lines to go make a semi U-turn in the middle of the street to turn into the slanted parking on the other side of the street. And I've never seen anyone stopped for it. And I know staff has indicated it's hard to sign for that sort of thing. I mean, obviously it's a double line. That's not what you should be doing, but people do it all the time. And I've seen more near accidents from that than speeding or any other thing on Johnson Drive, because you can't see if you're backing out if someone's whipping around from the opposite, side of the street. But I don't know how you solve for that with the diagonal parking spaces.
So there is nothing that comes to the top of my mind now. It is an unfortunate reality of living in the climate that we do, that there are some things, if we were in like Florida, I would say, hey, we could do some like raised median, delineators that Brent's just going to plow over at the first snowfall. So, I mean, there is some like just unfortunate reality about that. I will tell you from my home community, just urban legend that the ticket for getting a U-turn into a parking space is like $10,000 or something.
Yeah.
And then
I mean,
just,
yeah, if
like,
we
so
can,
you just start sewing that into
if you have
the community.
enforcement recommendations, I'd like to see it, turning right on red. If it's, posted no, I learned in somewhere where I missed the signage in college, in law school, was the same as running a red light. So, are there other, more strict things we could look at for that violation if we can't do the raised medians or other treatments that might make sense? Because that's where I see, now that we've reduced the lanes, I think speeds have gone down, and that's sort of where I see the most danger.
Yeah. And let me go back and see if I can find something. Nothing does come to mind. But I will say this is that when you are talking about a 50% reduction in serious injury crashes, I mean, these are some of the harder discussions that you need to start having. Like once you start getting the easy stuff done, then it's, need to get serious about some of the other things too. Yeah.
Sam?
Yeah, you touched on this with speeding, and I suspect it's something similar, but clearly 50% of all the crashes have to do with inattention. It doesn't take a rocket science, of which I am definitely not, to determine that cell phones are a pretty big role in that. And I had asked staff about enforcement on hands-free laws, which I believe is state law, and I think we're looking into that. But I guess anecdotally, not just Mission, but nationwide, like what's the best way to go about that? Because I'm going to guess enforcement is probably not the best way. You need to somehow engage the driver so they're paying attention more and don't have an urge to pick up their phone.
My daughter turned 16 on Monday. This is like the most top of mind thing that I can think of at the moment is how to separate her from her cell phone while she is driving to do that. Do you want to talk, Officer Judge, about, I mean, I know that you had, yes, I know that he has opined about this during some of our meetings, so I'll let him cook.
Like that?
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, folks. How are you? Fascinating to be a part of this. Thank you for letting me join. Thank my administration and Brent for being my sounding board for every question I have related to traffic calming, you name it. If I see it, I usually bounce off him and go, where am I wrong on this? Help me out. So I've got my own thoughts, probably not the time or place right now to share them. I would probably send them up my chain of command to make sure they are talking points worth your time and attention. But pretty much everything that's come up, except for a couple things, I could probably shed some light on and or correct. I see a lot out there, mostly from my last 2 years and 4 months here, basically. Not too different from Leawood, 27 years there, people are people. I love the fact that we have so many streets that are under 30 miles per hour, which is awesome. There's a couple, I'm not sure why they're more than that. I would love to talk to you all about that. I'm excited about the improvements. I love the strobe lights. I'm big on the crosswalks. I hate to say more signage because, signs everywhere there's signs, but they do have their purpose if they're placed appropriately, like he was talking. If we don't want people making left turns into parking, then we need legal notice, and we could probably figure out a way to create zones of that. But again, you're going to get me going down this rabbit hole of talking points that I am passionate about. I'm not making things up, and anything we can do to slow people down, get their eyes up, make this a pedestrian friendly city, Let's include the e-bikes and the micro-mobility stuff and the walkers and the path improvements. I mean, the city is just prime for all these safety measures that we're considering without it being overkill, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Laura, maybe it would make sense to have a different like work session on like education and potential complementary traffic code type changes.
To share.
Absolutely.
On that
And-
point.
And we can capture this a little bit more. We just touched it and I'm gonna lose it. We looked at kind of breaking down the statistics between, and so I'm just gonna take 2025 statistics, for example. So in this study, I think the citation data that was provided to the consultants in 2025, there were 25 citations related to wireless communication devices, 60 related to inattentive driving. So my question, before we share this out, and we have it for 23, 24, 25, and inattentive driving in that category is always significantly, generally, like in 2023, there were 4 wireless communication or, citations and 64 inattentive driving. So what else falls into inattentive driving? Right?
Well, the inattentive violation is only in play for a crash. So somebody's driving down the street, eating a cheeseburger with both hands, well, because I see it, maintain their lane. That's not a violation. You can watch a movie. You can hold your phone up to your eyes and watch a movie, steer with your knees, and that's not inattention. None of that stuff is illegal. So inattention, when you see that, it means it's
Not reassuring.
right. It has to be related to a crash. Not quite. In my opinion, most crashes are probably related to phone use. In my unofficial, unscientific study, probably 70%. But with that being said, there are a lot of things you can do on your phone that aren't illegal. You can edit phone numbers, you can add phone numbers, you can watch, and as long as it's not a written communication that you are texting and or reading, you can do everything else on your phone. You can shop to some extent, depending on what you're reading, because to me, that it's a written communication as well. So the laws are written so poorly. They were basically throwaway laws because people who make laws like to text and drive, so they're not going to cut off their nose to spite their faces. So we have to work within the law, and it's hard to get those because officers are sitting in their cars and they're looking at other people and people are doing this and they don't see from the shoulders below. Are they texting? Obviously they're texting. But unless you can get up on it like me on my motorcycle where I can sit right over their shoulder and look at their texts, those are hard stops to make. They really are. Even at night, if you see the glow, they could be doing one of 100 things on their phone legally. So it's a hard violation to track.
When I would add too, I believe the state statute is like from 2011. So it is
completely outdated, and it was a
outdated.
weak law to begin with. And the hands-free is one of my talking points. We'll get into that later. I'm a big fan of that, obviously, because I try to work all the crashes during day shift, and now I have a partner, and he'll be working crashes with me to keep the patrol guys doing patrol type stuff. But it's also our chance to sincerely get out there and not browbeat people and just tell them what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the reasons for it. Because there's some interesting data on the Kansas Department of Revenue website regarding crashes, costs, and things like that. And I can tell you that the data is worse than what's collected because it's probably misreported or underreported by officers who don't want to take a crash. And they're like, were you texting? No, good enough. Here's your inattentive ticket. Go away. So human nature plays a huge factor in driving and reporting and things like that. So, but yeah, that's what I'm here for, and I dig it. So glad to do it. Yeah. Was there something specific you wanted me to address? I'm sorry. That's great. I could go all night. But please reach out if you have questions or, like I said, I'm all over the city. I think the city is in good shape. There's some modifications I think we could look at. But overall, if we're going to do this and make it a walking friendly city with all these new buildings and apartments going on, now's the time to get it done. So we're ready for all these new folks who are walking to Broadmoor Park and to Johnson Drive and jumping on the trails and stuff. So yeah, good timing. Okay.
Thank you, Officer Chuddick.
Yes. Maybe the short answer, enforcement is difficult. So yes, under the current laws. So there you go.
Ben?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of things. I was gonna say, I'm rewinding a little bit, but let's do get into e-bikes and things at the right moment in the right venue. But I feel comfortable, I guess, asserting that I have a pretty high level of experience and have for a long time riding conventional bikes and an e-bike. And I think the thing that I see about these motorized scooters and bikes is it turns people into what we call vehicular cyclists. They're behaving like a vehicle or traveling at those speeds. And now you can just buy something, open the box, get on it, and go that fast. You haven't developed those skills. I mean, that's what I see every time these stories are in the news is all of a sudden I can do 25 miles an hour on two wheels, and I haven't been, practicing those skills for 5 or 10 years. Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. But I have tons of thoughts about bikes. We can save the rest for another day. The other thing is I once asked the same question about back-end parking when they put it in downtown at the city market area. What I was told is, and I looked it up and I believe this, it makes sense to me. We feel way more comfortable backing out of a space than we should. And it feels way more awkward to back into a space than the actual danger is. So I don't know. It's one of those, yeah, hard sell for sure. But I think the numbers are there from what I recall reading. So
Yeah, I'm not doubting that it perhaps is a solution that would have some benefits, but I would see it causing a lot more issues. And I know that we're not all about vehicle traffic and speed and flow being the number one thing, but I'm imagining one lane each direction on Johnson Drive and having people trying to back into spaces, like traffic is going to move at a crawl. No one will be driving on Johnson Drive.
So I think the takeaway message is that tool in the toolbox goes underneath the bottom of the
Other
toolbox.
people might disagree with me, but yeah, I mean, I just can picture the scenes in my head.
But I will say pragmatically that we tried to prioritize what is in here for things that people are going to be into that didn't have pushback, that are going to locations that are needful and that will have positive impact. That is not to say that there are not other things that, places where we could push or things, but just in terms of the path that the opportunities for the clearest path to improvement are, sort of what's captured.
Debbie.
A couple things. Today I came to City Hall, and as I pulled up on the parallel parking side, two women flew by me, and they were both each of them were looking in the mirror, and the one woman hit the curb right next to the police department. Some people are just really gutsy.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, as somebody whose chosen profession, like others, is to save other human beings' lives, it is exhausting at times. And actually, like aggressive driving, distracted driving, all of those things are on their way up, not on the decline. So, yeah.
a second point, and I know this isn't relative to this, but it is for the future. My daughter just came in from New Mexico today. She has a Tesla. When she gets back to the airport in New Mexico, she can push a button and the car will come from its parking spot and pick her up.
Yes.
That's a whole new set of information and details we're going to have to look at. It's electric cars, I think. Self-driving, yeah.
I know that you all have lives outside of here, so I will not get my soapbox start talking about autonomous vehicles right now. But yes, many other safety things. Yes. Well, oh, yes.
Justin, are there any comments online? Public comments? And Brian did, yeah. Okay. Okay, well, thank you for your presentation.
Yep.
And
I will certainly end with this. I mean, I know that you guys certainly appreciate them about the usability. Working with Brent and Stephanie and Brian has certainly been a pleasure. I think that their, just awareness of the priorities of the city, their ability to articulate and work with our team is, a big reason why, this turned out the way it did. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay. Brian.
Yeah, Councilmember Schmidt did have a comment. He said no one will be driving through Johnson Drive, which is good. He wants people driving to Johnson Drive.
Oh, good job. Good job. Well, clearly this is safety is a passion of the city and to our citizens and all those that have visited us. So I'm glad for the spirit of debate, and thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Stephanie?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. It was truly a pleasure to work with Howard and Drew and the team at Burns and McDonnell. They came highly recommended from their references, and I think we made a great selection when we selected them to help us with this program. Our conversations will probably continue, and hopefully we'll have a partnership later on for maybe a grant coming up. So overall, this plan really does give Mission a clear data-backed roadmap to improve safety for everyone in our city, positioning us for a well-funded future and other policies that may come with this. Traffic calming, that's, a policy that we need to look forward to. So this will help drive that, and hopefully you'll see something in front of you. I can't guarantee it will be tomorrow because we got a lot going on right now, but it's in the back of my head, and we'll present that to you. So ultimately, we're looking for adoption of this program. I heard a couple comments that I think I just want to clarify before moving on with the adoption about a statement or documentation excluding KDOT or just making sure that we have that verbiage in the agreement that shows that those roads are owned, operated, and maintained by KDOT are not part of our study. And then a statement or something that just says we're aware of e-bike and scooters. So we can maybe redraft that for the council meeting in a couple weeks. Okay. Anything else that I'm missing?
So just a question that I have, because of the nature of this, should this be on consent or regular agenda because of the federal funding and all?
I mean, if you're comfortable, I think this is a good regular agenda item. Also, because of the companion item, which is next on the list.
Yeah.
But also because we'll be making some edits to the plan.
Okay.
I think it is better, and it gives us an opportunity to point out that conversation that you've had this evening and how those comments have been incorporated into the final plan.
So committee, regular agenda, is that okay? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Our next action item this evening is for approval of the leadership commitment and goal setting for Mission's Vision Zero initiative, also from Stephanie.
Yeah, so you saw in Howard's slides that we talked about a commitment and goal setting language. So this is an adoption of leadership commitment and goal setting language as the city's official Vision Zero commitment in support of our Safe Streets and Roads for All comprehensive safety action plan. So this is part of the federal, Safe Streets and Roads for All program. The Federal Highway Administration does require participating jurisdictions to make a formal leadership commitment, eliminating roadway fatalities and serious injuries. So this must be adopted by our governing body and include a clear goal and timeline for achieving zero roadway fatalities. The proposed language reflects Mission's recent safety performance while establishing the ambitious, measurable, and achievable Vision Zero framework. Fortunately for the city of Mission, we've experienced zero traffic fatalities in the 4 out of the last 5 years, demonstrating meaningful progress towards safer roads. However, we do still have some serious injuries continuing to occur, with 17 over the last 5 years. So we have a need to continue our focus, investment, and accountability. So we have some recommended language before you to follow that Vision Zero commitment and goal setting. And that says the city of Mission celebrates that city-owned streets have experienced zero fatalities in 4 of the last 5 years. While serious injuries still occur, the city commits to eliminating all roadway fatalities and serious injuries on city-owned streets by 2035, with an interim target of reducing serious injuries by 50% by 2030. And so adoption of this language fulfills our SS4A leadership commitment and goal setting requirements, formally establishes the city's Vision Zero policy direction, and reinforces council and executive leadership's commitment to prioritizing roadway safety for all users. And this will help guide our future policy decisions, project prioritization, and grant applications, including eligibility for SS4A implementation and demonstration funding. Achieving that interim goal would reduce injuries by 50%, decreasing that number from 17 to about 8 or 9. And there's no budget impact associated with this. As we look forward to implementing some of the countermeasures that were included in those priority areas that were just presented in our SS4A CSAP, that will hopefully help bring those serious crashes down even more. So we're recommending the approval of this commitment and goal setting language.
Are there any questions or comments from the public or the committee?
I had one question as it kind of relates to budget cycle, either for you, Stephanie, or for Laura. And if we were going to start seeing, you're mentioning the budget piece, if we're going to start seeing, do we anticipate this budget cycle with our, road planning and everything, both pieces of this coming in and the bike ped study? I know complete streets won't be all the way there yet, but are we expecting this
You're gonna
budget cycle?
see, and I'll talk to that here at the end of Mr. Morton's item about the street program. But yes, in this year's budget discussions, we will start looking at, again, some of these recommendations, bike ped recommendations, which we've already started sort of overlaying, recommendations, particularly out of the Rock Creek Corridor study, the first phase, as it relates to Martway. In fact, we just looked at some revised budget estimates in our internal CIP staff meeting this week. So yes, we're going to be very street focused in our CIP discussions as part of the 2027 budget process.
Also, some of these projects are some that we can do in-house too. It could be as simple as signal timing. It could be as simple as adding some signage. There are some technology grants out there. The grants don't always have to fall under that IIJA program. Obviously, we're coming to an end with that in 2026. And like Howard said, there's some unpredictability on when that notice of funding may come out. I think generally we see them in the spring. Who knows, what's going to happen. So there are other grants out there that we could take advantage of as well. And it doesn't have to be in the 2026 year. It could be looking forward to. It also could be something that, we implement into our CARS programs and other programs like our street programs. So.
Ben?
Yeah, it's just something to sort of draw back up from my memories from the KDOT local consult was that there's grant programs even at the state level that for just innovative technology, and it can just about be anything that other people aren't really doing or is unique to mission. And some of these grants just have, unencumbered, rolled over dollars from past years. So might as well shake the tree.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, consent or regular?
I recommend acceptance on regular agenda.
All right. Our fourth action item, thank you, Stephanie. Our fourth action item this evening is for approval of an interlocal agreement related to the Super Pool Pass program for 2026 and approve the swim meet letter of understanding from Penn Alimony. Now, I heard from Phil that there's 6 weeks more of winter.
Yeah, Punxsutawney Phil.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
What was
so
that?
We're gonna have to hold off on the. He's. We'll prepare as if he's wrong then. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate the Pennsylvania reference. So Mission's been a part of this program for 17 years now. And over that time, we've brought in a little over $101,000. So this for us is a revenue generator, but it was originally designed to increase attendance at all of the local aquatic facilities in the region. And so we kind of banded together, created a program that allows you to purchase a membership at the local pool, then purchase a membership for the Super Pool Pass that essentially gets you access to all of these other local pools. And so they tabulate all the revenue, pay for the fixed costs, and then divide that out by the sheer number of attendees at each of the pools. And so that's kind of how we've gotten the 4-year breakout. the numbers have trended down largely because the participating cities have kind of left the program. So this year, Roland Park is coming back. So now it's Fairway, Prairie Village, Mission, and Roland Park. So we anticipate that those revenues will then see a slight uptick up, which is wonderful. But the non-resident rates going up $5 this year compared to last year. The I think we covered the participating cities. Essentially, you have to purchase a membership for 2 years at the community that's participating, and then you gain access to the Super Pool Pass. And that's to prevent poaching from other communities from pulling away residential numbers. And so there's some safeguards kind of built into the program, which is why we have the letter of understanding and the swim meet agreement. And so staff is recommending approval of the interlocal agreement along with the letter of understanding for the 2026 season. These documents have been reviewed by the Parks, Recreation, and Tree Commission and have been approved by city's legal counsel. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the public or the committee?
So how much more is the multi-pool pass than just the local pass?
So if you purchase a resident membership at our pool, the Super Pool Pass will be $20 more.
Okay.
And that'll get you access to any one of them. Thank you.
Brian, have any questions? Brian? No, okay. All right, regular consent. Okay. Yeah. Our fifth action item this evening is for the approval of a landscape maintenance services contract renewal from Brent Morton.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is our landscape renewal contract. Since 2025, it's been the best practice to just wrap everything in one landscape maintenance package. And a lot of this came from the native plantings along Johnson Drive at City Hall. Just that takes a special kind of maintenance to make that stuff thrive in the corridor. So we went out to bid in 2025, got a contractor on board. We got a late start in 2025 and had a little catch up work with weed pulling and stuff like that. But by the end, Johnson Drive and City Hall was looking a lot better. The contract gets renewed every year, but it rolls through 2030. The main locations that we maintain with this contract is City Hall, Police Department, Aquatic Center, Johnson Drive natives, and soon to become the next phase of Johnson Drive will have the natives too. So you'll probably be seeing that add to this contract in late 27 probably. Park and Ride Transit Center and the Community Center. I believe there's cost savings here. This covers everything from mulching, trimming trees along Johnson Drive, pulling weeds, deadheading the native plants when it's necessary. And we also have a native specialist too that kind of takes a look at everything in the city now. So we don't irrigate our beds because that is costly in my opinion to maintain that stuff. But with that weekly visit, they can let Public Works know that, you know, the beds need watering in August or whatever. We get a truck out there and, you know, keep the stuff alive and protect our investment along Johnson Drive and City Hall and other locations. So this was the first year we've ever done a contract like this. So there's going to be some tweaks, I would say, the first couple of years just to get it right. And I'm no native expert, so it's nice having those people available. You can call them and have the site visits and get it figured out. So they are requesting the 2% increase that's in the contract documents and then some additional services. City Hall is one of them for the native specialist. It was, you know, it was a hodgepodge before we had a maintenance contract. So a lot of the stuff was backlogged and wasn't being maintained correctly. So just getting everything back up to where it's the weekly maintenance and everything's looking good. And the way the contract's structured, everything's kind of line item like you'd see a street program. So if City Hall's looking real good and we want to use that money on Johnson Drive or somewhere else, we can send the specialist there for an hour or two, and it doesn't really affect the contractor, the bottom dollars. And then there's some additions for Johnson Drive. Like I said, not a native specialist, but it was recommended from their specialist that we have such a variety of plant types that some of them have to be deadheaded at different times. And we just had one deadheading at the end of the season. So just doing that at the right times added like 5 services. So that is an additional 2025. So those are the changes in the contract. We're still within the budget of 50,000 that we have for Johnson Drive maintenance every year. So the new contract would be $48,914.08 with Embassy Landscaping. And we had there's a learning curve the first 2 months, but we've had a good experience since. So I think this year will be even better. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the public or committee?
Cheryl, I have one
Yeah.
quick question. I would say historically, the park and ride and the transit center has perhaps not gotten the most attention on this contract. And we do have, some World Cup usage that's going to be out of there this summer. So maybe just asking them to keep a closer eye on those areas would be good.
Yep, for sure.
Wanda?
My question has to do with, I just wanted to say that I really like the native plants, that's all. I forgot my question.
I'll take it.
Anyone else? Brian? Dave? Okay. All right. Agenda item.
I recommend we accept on consent.
Okay. Thank you. The next one is also from Brent. It's approval of the 2026 Street Rehabilitation Project Award.
Thank you. Yep, we are going to have a lot of construction in Mission this year. So this is the first one you get to hear about from me. So this is our 2026 residential street rehabilitation project. The residential street program, I mean, we've talked about this for the last 5 years. We allocate $2 million for residential streets because there's not a lot of funding mechanisms to help with rebuilding residential streets. So there was a need 5 years ago to increase that budget number so we could start tackling some of these poor streets in town. And we've pushed the envelope every year, I think budget-wise on these streets in the last 5 years, and probably fixed a good chunk of the worst roads in town that had water issues, pavement issues. I mean, there's no more ice issues in town, if you've noticed, for the most part. So a lot of that stuff's been addressed. So with that, this year, budget's a little tight. We bid the project. We designed 4 roads, which we've done in the past, trying to hit that $2 million threshold. Some years we get great bids. If we get the bids out like we did in December this year, we usually come back with good numbers and a lot of bidders. So the 4 streets we did was 54th Street from Lamar to Dearborn and 61st Terrace from Woodson to Knoll. And that was the base bid along with all the stormwater work. So we have S&B funding for all the stormwater on all 4 streets. So we wanted to wrap that in the base bid. So we're taking advantage of that 50-50 match from the county. So if we go back and do those roads in 27, the stormwater's in, less utilities to move, everything just moves a lot quicker. So we didn't want to slow that process down. And stormwater scares me more than anything in town. So I thought it was a good move. 54th Terrace from Horton to Dearborn was bid alternate 1. And then 63rd Street from Beverly Drive to Reed's Drive was bid alternate 2. They're all poor streets, but if you combine the numbers, they're rated at about 29.9, so about 30, which is poor. And we had 5 years ago, we had streets all the way down to like 10. So, I mean, we're working our way up there. Scope of work is full depth replacement, so subgrade rehab, 8 inches of asphalt, new curves, new drive approaches. We're not really adding sidewalk, but wherever there is sidewalk, we're making sure it's 5 foot and, replacing that as well with these projects, along with all the stormwater infrastructure. If it's rated poor enough, we go after the county funds. If it's CMP, we replace it anyways because you're already there and there's that economy of scale. But I'd say 95% of the stormwater we're doing on these streets is county funded, at least 50-50. The project was bid in December, got bids back on January 9th, 6 bidders. We got good bids. I'm not going to go through every number, but we're about $200,000 under the engineer's estimate on the base bid. So if you look through that whole, I mean, we got good numbers. So GB was the lowest bidder again. They've done our work, I think, the last 3 years, 3 or 4. Had good luck. I mean, there's always some hiccups when you're tearing everybody's driveways out in their road and spring rains and all that stuff, but we worked through that. They were the lowest bidder, so we're recommending a contract with GB Construction at $1,049,674.70. Sorry, for the base bid. Inspection, you will see at the next committee meeting, is estimated at $92,320. Design for these streets was about $325, so it brings our total costs in for 2026 street program about 1.45 million. And we're getting about 60 grand back from S&P with these. It's not like what you saw last year in Melhaven, where we're adding a bunch of storm system new and a bunch of old existing. These streets have minimal storm at the end that we're tying back in. Excuse me. That's why that number's so low. I will say with the Johnson Drive, there's like 1 million of that wrapped up in that package with all that storm. So we'll be chasing that as well. The contract gives 270 days, and that's just because we built a contract for all 4 streets. We've got a good working relationship with them. So, I mean, they're going to be in town, I would say, summer, late summer, everything's completed and wrapped up. They're not leaving town once they're here. If they're here to get it done, especially with the subs they use for some of their stuff. Missing a page. Nope, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. So, be happy to answer any questions on the street program for 2026.
If I might. And then, I had some additional numbers that I thought was important to share because, as you all know, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make the money work on the things that we want to do. But a big piece of that, particularly as it relates to our street program, is the commitment that we made to the community when we asked for them to support our dedicated street sales tax. And as we've looked at mill levy increases, knowing that a significant portion of property tax revenues is transferred every year to help maintain our streets. So when we started looking at what we thought we could accomplish from the financial cash flow standpoint and what made sense, and looking at those numbers that fell below that $2 million threshold, I wanted to go back and look at what does that look like over the last 4 years in terms of an average, right? Because we design a year ahead, some of these things cross boundaries. So if I look at, and I'm happy to share this out in more detail, but since 2023, including what the recommendation tonight is for 2026, we will have expended almost $9.4 million on residential streets. When I average that over that 4-year period, we're spending $2.3 million. So you're exceeding that promise to voters, which I think is an important part as we look at the total amount that we spend. So I just wanted to add that. So although it may feel like, and things are slowing down. I mean, we have a lot of projects going on and we have a lot of decisions to make in terms of we're waiting on the results of the updated PCI inventory, and we fully expect, to the mayor's previous question, to come back in a work session or multiple work sessions to talk about really turning our 10-year street program on its head with that new PCI data, looking at many of the things, improvements that we've talked about related to Safe Streets for All or bike ped implementations, and seeing how all of those things funnel into plans. And then quite honestly, as we look at year 5 in a capital improvement program, we're in 2031, and that is the year that we would need to look at potential renewal of the dedicated street sales tax. So all of these things are upon us, but I want you all to also be clear and understanding that we're mindful as staff of how all of those pieces fit together as we bring forward recommendations. Questions from the committee or the public? I do have one question. The communication with the residents, those residential streets, will they include feedback from the previous projects?
We probably get a mailer out. We haven't done that yet, but we've done that in the past. So we'll probably get something sent. It's been a little crazy lately, but we will try to get something out the door for sure.
Thank you. Consent or regular agenda?
I recommend acceptance on the regular agenda. I think it's important to address the fact that we are working on streets as we promised the public.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you to Public Works for all your work on the snow removal.
Yeah.
Love the new names on the snowplows. So anyway, that concludes our action items. We do not have any discussion items this evening. Before we adjourn, Ms. Smith, are there any department updates for the Community Development Committee?
Brian, do you have anything other than, well, yes. And then I think Stephanie told me no earlier today. Okay. Yep. And then Penn has a quick one.
So tomorrow night is the night. The most exciting thing that's going to happen in Mission tomorrow night is our open house for the Rock Creek Corridor Study Phase 2. Exciting, yes. 5 to 7 at the community center. Be there, be square. That's it.
Just an update, Mission Summer Family Picnic registration open on Monday. Oh yeah, I guess I'm hungry. Mission Summer Camp, 10-week-long program at the Powell Community Center, opened registration on Monday. Thank you for catching that. And as of 3 days later, we are 66% capacity. So that's on each of the 10 weeks. Our high is at 75% on a couple of them. So we're off to a great start.
I really like the music you play at Sylvester Powell. It's very
Thank you.
nice.
Yeah, we've chosen a great combination of favorites from all of our teams.
I'll just give a really quick update on the snow recap. So our team worked Friday, the 23rd through Monday, the 26th. So we had 12-hour shifts going for those 4 days. And we have some numbers to share. So they used 1,250 gallons of brine applied in advance, 325 hours worked, and 1,852 lane miles plowed. So that's almost like 20 trips around the city out there planning, and about 250 tons of salt that was used. So did a great job. It was very cold. The guys still love the new pre-treated salt. It works very well. So we hope to continue to purchase and use that. It seems to be very efficient and effective, especially in the cold temperatures. So thanks.
Okay, it is now 8:30, 2 hours, okay. And with no further discussion, that concludes the meeting of the Community Development Committee. Again, this video will be made public on our website at missionkansas.org. Thank you.
It is now 8:30, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee to order. While this meeting is being held in person, we are also offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionks.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you're participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you're part of the in-person group tonight, please raise your hand but stay seated and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comment. When you make your comment, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Be conscientious of others trying to speak and speak slowly and clearly. This meeting will be recorded and posted on the city's website at missionks.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. Ms. Folks, will you please call the roll?
Hayden Champosi. Here. Vaughn.
Here.
Camosa.
Here.
Ryard.
Here.
Kring.
Here.
Schmid.
Here.
Here virtually. Josie.
Here.
Carpenter Davis.
Here.
Thank you. Our first item of business tonight is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment now on an item not on our agenda tonight? Please note public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on to public presentations. I understand we will not have our previously scheduled public presentation this evening, but Ms. Smith, would you like to provide an update to the committee?
Yes, and you can all thank me for my inability to get the year-end report finished in time to present it. And looking at the agenda, knowing there would be a lot of discussion around a couple of things on community development, we will work on that. You will have it in advance of when we have sort of our mini retreat on the 18th, but we will not be talking about year-end statistics this evening. So, darn it.
Okay.
But you'll second that.
Moving on to action items. Our first action item this evening is the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Robin Folks.
Yes, thank you. Draft minutes of the January 14th Finance and Administration Committee meeting were included for review and acceptance in your packet tonight.
Are there comments or a recommendation?
Recommend acceptance on consent. Second.
Consent, thank you. Our next action item this evening is for consideration of an agreement with Johnson County for participation in the World Cup Transit Circulator Agreement from Laura Smith.
Yes, thank you. I think the mayor made reference to this earlier, and we've kind of been alluding to it for the last several meetings. But finally, we have for you your consideration an agreement with Johnson County to participate with the cities of Merriam, Shawnee, Lenexa, Olathe, Overland Park, and Leawood for a Johnson County transit circulator route during the period of time when the World Cup games will be played here in Kansas City. I think we've mentioned before that KC 2026 selected our transit center to be one of the locations that will serve as a direct route to and from FanFest. Dates to be determined, but then the circulator route will pick up from the transit center and run among these communities that have agreed to participate in the program. So essentially, there are going to be 3 routes with some hubs where you can transfer. And the map included in the packet sort of indicated how that might work. So cities had the opportunity to ask the county to be considered for inclusion in that circulator route. The guidance that was provided was to think about where there were concentrations of restaurants, hotels, other activities that visitors and residents of the county might be interested in. Our transit center just serves as a natural hub. So we're looking at how we can take advantage of that. We think the cost is reasonable to participate in that. And as we look at and build out the calendar of events, we will help cross promote. You'll see later on Friday with your packet kind of a full master calendar, particularly highlighting our special events. We will be hosting, assuming we get our license approved from FIFA. It's been submitted and everybody's license, I think, across the county is pending. It's still at this point to have a watch party on June 25th in connection with the Mission Market that evening at Broadmoor Park, kind of combining those events. A lot of the infrastructure in terms of food and drink and other music and other things would be happening. But many of the other communities on this circulator route will be having similar watch parties and events throughout that time period. And so we can certainly look to how we can promote and encourage people to also stop and spend time. Our goal would be also, once we get this finalized, you all approve it, that we would like to convene or offer to our businesses a meeting where we have an opportunity to share with them some of these details and encourage them and help them think about ways that they can promote themselves and their businesses during that time period as well. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
And the World Cup window is, for those of you who are not aware, June 11th through July 19th is when the games will occur.
Do we have an office contact for this? You know, when Emily was here, she did all the special event stuff and you could call her. Is there somebody that we're going to have a contact for all the FIFA stuff?
Well, yes, it will be probably Robin or I. I mean, our goal is to really build out that master calendar so that you have that and we have that information that's kind of readily at everybody's fingertips and can be shared out.
Thank you.
And we'll be having like big social media campaigns around this in the 75th anniversary, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because we have that. We have lots of things to celebrate in 2026.
Other
We're
questions?
gonna be exhausted in 2027.
Big nap of 2027. Any other questions or comments or recommendation?
Consent agenda.
Consent. Okay, thank you. And our final action item this evening is for consideration of a revision to school zone traffic fines from Justin Carroll.
I hope this item was a little less convoluted than our agenda item for last month to see what the action we're doing here is. So basically, when the cities implemented e-ticketing, the DigiTicket process last year, everything became obviously automated through the little handheld things that print out the tickets. One of the things that the officers realized was it was just the way the machines were, it was defaulting to the STO, the standard traffic ordinance. And when we actually looked into that a little further, we realized what we actually had on the books for the city ordinances, we had opted out of that, the standard traffic ordinance for speeding in school zones. And we had said we are going to refer to the court's adapted, or the judge's adopted fine schedule. Those are actually the same thing. They both double the fine. However, technically it's a kind of a loophole that we need to close because you're getting a ticket that's referencing something that isn't technically on the books. So that's what this action item does. It fixes that. It defaults back to the STO, which is what the court's adopted schedule is anyways. And so the fine will still be the same. It'll be doubled, but this just fixes that loophole just in case to cover us moving forward.
Any questions or comments?
I move consent.
I actually have a quick question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's okay. It's okay. I just wonder if there is any risk in the retroactive space and if that's something that we can correct on the citations that were already out, or if it matters. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'd have to know. We'd have to double check on that.
If we can, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll have that. I can have that answer before.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, I'd rather not have those just hanging out over our judicial heads if we can help it. I don't know.
It hasn't technically been an issue yet, but it could be. So
Yeah.
we're fixing it. Yeah.
I heard a recommendation for consent. And everyone agrees. So consent it is. Thank you, Justin. We do not have any discussion items tonight. Ms. Smith, do you have any further updates for the F&A committee? Okay, let me read my spiel and then yes. It is now 8:39 p.m., 9 minutes later. With no further discussion, that concludes the meeting of the Finance Administration Committee. This video will be made public on our website at missionks.org. Thank you. Yes, we are adjourned.